Welcome back to another episode of Living Lifted with Brenton Ross. I think I just shoulder checked that mic to get things going. That's okay. I have a very, very awesome special guest today, Diana Stoehr. Even though it looks like Stoehr, you'll see it in the description. It's pronounced Stoehr. And you are seriously one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Same, right back at you.
Thank you. But what's unique and also, I think, amazing about you is you're also very strong. Like a lot of times when you meet someone that's really, really nice, they're usually not strong with it as well. And I think that you have such a strength about you and such an amazing heart, but yet you're still so kind.
Oh, thank you.
Just thankful to know.
That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
We're starting off on a good tone.
Yeah,
and
this is
I mean
good.
it. Seriously. It's you're just so awesome to be around. I always enjoy
thank
it.
you.
You're very, very welcome. So we'll get into what Diana does and start talking about her. Before I do, I have my LA hat on. This is not a Dodgers hat. This is just a young LA hat. But I wanted to just say our heart and prayers goes out to everybody right now in LA that are dealing with these fires. I've been seeing some of the videos today, and it doesn't even seem like it could even be real.
It doesn't. It's
I saw
terrible.
a video of this guy on a bike, and he's on a motorcycle, and he's just driving down the streets, and he's filming, I mean, all the grocery stores that burned down. And
It doesn't look real.
yeah,
It looks
I think
like a
a
movie
lot
set.
of us, until you see that kind of picture, like up in the mountains and in the hills where all the trees and all that kind of stuff is, but it's actually down in the cities itself.
Or the entire neighborhoods that are gone.
And then you see videos. I saw one yesterday that, at least that's what the video portrayed and what they talked about, that they've seen people even lighting the fires because of some people just want to see the world burn, which is just, that's heartbreaking, you know, and so confusing and frustrating. You hear about them hooking up to fire hydrants so there not being any water, or how they've been pulling funds from the fire department's budget. And now here we are, you know, and it's just one more thing that people are confused and scared and frustrated and angry about because they don't feel like they have all the answers.
Right. The unknown is very scary.
It's hard not to think of like North Carolina with the floods that just happened a few months ago. And think about that, just like how quickly I just transitioned there. I don't mean to be desensitized whatsoever. That's the opposite of what I'm wanting to do. But like we go from what we're currently facing this week or even today, and it's something as huge as these fires, probably the worst there's ever been. And we're only a couple months removed from those floods that were just devastating.
Yeah.
And it's becoming so almost routine. We're all becoming desensitized. It's just like, what's next?
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, what else is it? We got the drones right now.
Right.
You know?
What's the next big thing that's not a good thing?
Yeah. And I think thank God that these scenarios have not been in our backyard. And it's frustrating and confusing for us, but I can't even imagine how the people feel that are going through these at the scene, like firsthand being affected. They're losing their homes through the flood or the fire. And then on top of that, now you see a video of someone lighting that fire, or you don't feel like you're getting the whole story, or why was there no water in the hydrants? And imagine how it feels to be those people. My heart breaks for those people.
And yet you hear a lot of them say how thankful they are that they were able to get out and they have their family, and they realize that, you know, I hate to say it's just a house. I don't mean that, because it's their home, but they feel blessed to still be here.
No, I'm glad
family.
you said that, because that's the proper perspective. What matters is the people, but there's people that've been losing their lives.
They're hurting for sure. They're hurting.
You know, and then the drones, like we were just talking about it a little bit before the cameras turned on, and I was watching a press conference that Trump gave a couple days ago, and everybody wanted to ask him questions about the drones, and even the headline on YouTube, because it was a live feed, was Trump talks about the drones, because they're trying to get people to click in and watch. And he finally answers a question about it, maybe 45 minutes into it. And he said, we know what they are. We know where they're coming from. We know where they're going. But the current administration, the military, doesn't feel that it's best at this time to let you know. Why? I mean, that's okay. Yeah, you want to trust them. But at the same time, it feels like, especially in the very recent future, it's hard to give them that trust, because that trust, with everything that's transpired, it feels like it's kind of been broken. I think that's fair to say. I think that's probably the easiest. I'm trying to be kind of guarded in how hard I go in on that, because
I think people feel maybe a little misled just because we don't feel like we're getting all of the answers. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then he says, and this was the most leading comment he made as I'm watching it, there's a certain place where there'd been a high concentration of the drones that he was supposed to be going there, and now he is not going to be going there. And why would that be? So if he doesn't even want to go there, you guys won't tell us what's going on as to why and what's going on. Very strange.
he has some answers.
Yeah. All that being said, what I want to do is give Diana an opportunity today to answer some questions and give some information about buying a home. She's a mortgage specialist. Even right now, like I'll speak for myself. I have a very young family. I've got a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. And, buying a home seems very intimidating for a lot of people right now. It doesn't feel like you really know what the exact right move to make is. Like historically, you would look at usually if you could buy a house and have a decent interest rate, and as long as you made enough money to cover your mortgage and stuff, like over time, you end up finding yourself in a pretty good spot where you had some equity in your house. And that was the way of doing it to set yourself up. And today it feels like there's so many moving components, and I'll get more into some of those as we go. A lot of us, or a lot of people, feel very, very intimidated by the process or even the concept as a whole. So maybe today's conversation will answer some of those questions and hopefully bring some peace and some direction, some guidance for those of you who are questioning whether or not you should buy a home this year or in the near future. So first things first, how did you get in the mortgage business and how long have you been doing it?
Well, it was one of those things that I actually kind of fell into, sort of happenstance, if you will. I was working as an assistant to a paralegal, and I ran into a gal in the building that I worked in that I had worked at the paper with. She and I were in, I think, high school at the time or whatever, early college. And we had worked at the paper. So I ran into her at this other place, and I asked her what she was doing. And she told me that she was working for a mortgage company. And I said, "Oh, what do you do? What does that mean?" I was very young and I really didn't have a clue.
Sure. And
she said, "Oh, I organize paperwork and I do this and that." And I thought, okay, that sounds like something I could do. And she was telling me that the pay was pretty decent, for a young person. And I thought, okay, well, I'm trying to put myself through school. Maybe this is something that I could do and while I'm furthering my education. So she was kind enough to put me in touch with her boss. And I reached out, got an interview, and went in and talked to him. And he was the nicest guy. And I just remember thinking, it was kind of surreal because he was, like scratching his head and thinking, and I could see the wheels turning, and he's looking at me, and he's like, "So what do you know about mortgage?" And I, absolutely nothing, to be quite honest. Really, I
as
know
much as you're telling me in this conversation.
I know that you need a mortgage to buy a home, and that's kind of, where it starts and where it ends. He said, "Okay, well, we need somebody. We're willing to train you." And so they hired me.
Wow.
And
saw a lot of potential in it.
Yeah, it was just great. I mean, I'm so thankful to him to this day.
Sounds like a smart guy. He could see you for who you are and know that he could teach you something.
I don't know what he saw, but I
just something, but not being the person that they want in business with. Yeah.
He saw something, and I'm thankful because it really launched a career for me that I absolutely love. But I remember when I first started, the gal that was training me, I was replacing her. She was very smart, and she was going through some different programs and scenarios, and she would say, "Okay, well, for this loan, she was talking about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac," and I looked at her and I kind of said, "Fannie Mae's candy. Like, what are you talking about?" So it was really fun to learn, and I loved it. It's fast paced. It's very detail oriented.
Moving target.
Sure. And I got to learn the back end of things, kind of the back room, the processing side first, which is So the loan officer would.
They didn't throw you right into the sales side.
No. I was pushing paperwork, so to speak.
Gotcha.
So the loan officer would take the application, give us to us as the processors, and we would verify all of the information in the application, get it ready for underwriting, work with the customer to get all the documents.
Than how you'd get into it today? Because I've had some buddies, not real recently, within maybe 3 to 5 years ago, that were getting into that, and they would go to like some of these big loan companies you see off like the freeway over here, and basically they throw them all into a big bullpen, and they're all in sales day one, and it was like the most cutthroat thing ever. They lived there, they're working the phones nonstop, and they're just running leads.
It is completely different than what it used to be when I started. I mean, that was, this is embarrassing to say, but like 30 years ago.
So I'm glad you just did that, because I've been trying to think in my head, how do I ask her how long it's been without feeling I'm dating her, but it's about her experience.
Yes. So quite a long time ago.
You just saved me, so thank you.
So the things have definitely changed. And not that people didn't go into it on the sales side right away, but I was very young, and I'm glad that I got into it from that side of things first, because it allowed me to learn a lot about how to get the loans through. Some of the loan officers I worked with, they were great people, but they were kind of funny. They were sales, so their job was trying to help this customer, pick the best product, but again, it was sales. So sometimes you'd get these applications and documentation, and it was like putting together a puzzle, because it wasn't always clear what we were doing. And so it was good to have that background and learn what's important.
That makes sense.
So I did that for, probably about 5 years, and then moved into the sales side actually by becoming a mortgage broker with some family members. And I did that for a couple of years. That was kind of trial by fire, but it was a really great experience, because it was being a business owner and kind of, doing the sales side as well. And we were processing our own stuff. So it was quite interesting. But with that, I was in a very small town at the time. I was living in Janesville, Wisconsin, and great place to, live and raise kids and whatnot, but 60,000 people. We had some great lending institutions in town, small banks, and they were impossible to compete with. So, and
a lot of relationship type business.
It is a relationship business, and you could have those good relationships, but they were just killing us with some of the programs they could offer that we couldn't and whatnot. So,
and they probably had a lot of those existing relationships already if they've already been in that small town for a long time. Got the same mortgage from the same bank that your dad, your mom, and your family, your uncle, and your aunt.
For sure. Yeah, tried and true, right? So I had an opportunity to go work for M&I Bank, and which became BMO later, but great bank. And I thought, well, if I can't beat them, I'm going to join them.
Still doing mortgages with them is what you're doing?
Yep, on the sales side. So was there about 10 years. Again, great bank. When they merged with BMO, or BMO bought them out, I guess, their business model changed a little bit. And some of the programs were a little different. I think they were just changing the way they were doing things in terms of the clientele that they were trying to bring in. And so
their niche was just a little bit different.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
So I had an opportunity to go work for a small mortgage company called Inlanta Mortgage. And they were headquartered out of Milwaukee, and small enough to be kind of a family-oriented company, big enough to have the technology and the programs that I was really interested in. And the other benefit for me moving to that company was that all we did was mortgage. So we weren't trying to solicit business for investment accounts or auto loans, whatever it might be. Our sole focus is mortgage, or so that made it easier to go out and be able to offer different programs to people. And it was a great company. They have since become part of the Guild. Mortgage.
And that's who you're with now.
That's who I'm with now. And great company. Same thing. It's almost like a little bit bigger, we're nationwide versus a smaller regional lender, but we have more programs, we have more options. It's just a great place to be. So I'm really happy. So that's kind of my story.
What do you enjoy about it?
Well, besides getting to help people, finance their dreams, that's kind of how I look at it, whatever that dream might be, whether it's their first home, their dream home, their kids' college, because they're doing some creative financing. I really enjoy that problem solving for people. So they come in and we talk about their goals and what they're trying to accomplish, and then looking at what options are available for them to make that work in a positive way, and being able to present them, with the means to get to where they want to be. I still believe that home ownership can be the biggest builder of wealth, if you will, for people. Okay. Maybe not in all situations, and obviously markets change and whatnot, but it can be a great way to build that wealth for many families. And I believe in it. You have to live somewhere. Sure. You have to have a home.
Oh, yeah.
And renting is fine. It's just not, I don't think it's as good of a financial tool. Maybe for some people it is the best situation. And there's, and all of those things change too. Sometimes renting is the best situation. Yeah. And then home ownership may become a better option for you. So,
when I write these questions, I kind of take into consideration the person, how I know them, and I try to not guess what they're going to say, but I kind of go down the thought vertice of what I feel where they'll probably go with it. And that kind of helps me steer where I want the conversation to go. And I had a feeling that what you enjoy about it was that you get to problem solve and help people. And so that's perfect because that's what you said. And so I get to, it just segues perfectly in what I want to ask you next. So I'm kind of going to set the stage a little bit. Okay. All right. And it's a hypothetical scenario, but I think a lot of us will relate with it, and then it'll give you an opportunity to kind of problem solve with us. And that way they can understand what you mean. Yeah. So today, when you factor in inflation, you factor in the surge in home prices specifically, especially in certain bubbles like here. I mean, there's a lot of areas here that in the last 4 years have not doubled, but almost tripled. Yeah. Almost tripled.
It's tough.
Because we had so many California people moving here that paid cash. I mean, areas where you could go buy a $400,000 or $500,000 house now just to get going are $1.3 million. Just like that. No improvements. Nothing changed, except now they're over $1 million. Okay. So you have that. You have your higher interest rates than we've seen in a long time. And I know, even you might say it, there's been times not that long ago, 15 years ago, forgive me if I'm wrong on my dates, but they were substantially higher. And I hear that. The difference is that house that's $1.4 million right now was $280,000. So yes, there's been inflation and wages are up, but they're not on par or not keeping up with how much the price has gone up.
Right.
So yes, those rates were higher, but we're talking 5 times higher of a price point now than we would have been then. So that makes that very difficult. You're talking about property taxes. If you have HOAs, you're going to factor that into it. If it's your first time worrying on mortgage insurance, your insurance for your home itself is now more expensive than it's been. So all that being said, how do you buy a home today and protect yourself from being in a bad situation?
That's a great question. So I think the first thing, honestly, to do is to meet with a mortgage professional, a lender, originator, and actually have that conversation of, this is what I want to do. I want to understand how to get there. I need to know what tools are available to me. Are there options? Because it really is, it's a work in progress. I mean, and it's a moving target, if you will, because things are always changing in our business. Yes. And, I hate to see anyone use rates and, by themselves or price or whatever, as a barrier, because I think it's really just a matter of getting some good education on what the process is, what the options are, what's available to you. Because there are a lot of misconceptions about, it used to be, if you want a conventional loan, you need to put 20% down. And there are different options out there, especially for first-time home buyers, that I think it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. So if you go in and you talk to someone and you're able to say, okay, here's, do an application, and that gives us the financial information, you're particular financial information to understand, okay, this is what you make. Also, what is it? Where do you want to be in terms of a budget? Because I know some people will go get pre-approved and they'll say, well, my lender pre-approved me for a $750,000 mortgage. And you say, okay, what is your budget? Because do you know what that means in terms of a payment? And some people really don't because they haven't gone to that place of finding out, okay, well, if it's $750,000 mortgage based on my amount down, blah, 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 here's, whatever my payment is. So I think it's important to really go through the process, especially if it's your first time, because there's a learning curve. I mean, I remember when I bought my first home, and that's when I was actually a loan processor, and I was still like, as a home buyer, it's completely different than when you are looking from the outside, or even when you're, on the originating side and you're trying to help someone. There's a lot to understand and to learn and to digest and process. And I don't think it's something that, if you want to buy a home, I don't think it's a matter of starting looking at homes and then you find one you love and then, let's go get pre-approved or get pre-qualified. I think it's the opposite. Let's start with getting the pre-approval, go in and kind of figure out where our finances are, what our budget looks like, what can we get pre-approved for, but then how that translates into where you want to be for, your particular family. Because young families, sometimes there's daycare, there's other expenses.
My name is Jacob McLaughlin, and I'm the founder of New to Medical Device Sales. Medical device sales is the selling of medical equipment to hospitals, surgeons. They're actually in the surgeries, and the average rep's going to make around $177,000. And what we've been able to do is help people break in about 8 weeks at around $100,000 starting out in the industry. It usually is 5 to 7 interviews, 6 to 12 weeks long in the interview process, and they go up against thousands of people. But that's because you are going to be working with some of the smartest human beings, such as surgeons. You're going to make over 6 figures. You get your car paid for, all your gas paid for, and all your travel paid for. We've been able to help over 2,000 people do this in the last 2 years. Not only do we help people break in to make a difference and change other people's lives, they also get to change their lives. If you're interested in helping people and you're interested in financially becoming free, we can definitely help you. And I think you should check out New to Medical Device Sales, our podcast, while you can also click the link where you guys can learn more about what we do at New to Medical Device Sales. I absolutely love Brenton. I thank him so much for what he's doing for all of you. And I hope you guys keep enjoying the episode.
Every situation is unique too. Income types are unique. Yeah. Someone might be self-employed versus being salaried, commissioned.
So much harder.
There's just so many different pieces of it that I think it's really smart if you do that first to kind of understand, here's my pathway forward. Here's the plan. I like to try and help people strategize. How do we get from here to here? Sometimes it's a matter of even, they might have some hiccups on their credit that we can make some suggestions as far as, hey, maybe try this, or here's some things that can help you improve credit score, which might make you a stronger borrower when you get pre-approved. So there's a lot of different pieces to it. And I certainly don't like to overwhelm anybody, when they come in, but I kind of like to meet them where they're at. So kind of meet with them and find out where are they in the process? Have they been through this before? Have they done an application before or owned a home before? And that helps me understand where to start. Easier
said than done, but would you say trying to take the emotion out of it as much as you can helps? I feel like it's almost impossible, especially if you're just like, this is where my kids are going to be.
It is impossible. It is impossible.
It's hard to do.
I think accessibility, like in lending for me, I really like to be accessible because I know myself when I've gone through the process, you're anxious because you're under contract on this home. You can picture your family there. You can picture your furniture there, whatever it might be. Picture yourself living in this home. And all of a sudden now you feel like there's this process you have to go through to get from the time you have an accepted offer to closing. And can be nerve-wracking.
Absolutely.
So if you have a good team around you, your realtor, your lender that, can be accessible and maybe answer questions, make you kind of put your nerves at ease a little bit, calm you down. I think that helps with the emotional side of it because we don't want it to be a negative experience.
Sure.
There are things that pop up that we have to work through. That's part of the deal.
Yeah. Everything in '08 definitely made the parameters and the regulations a lot tighter.
Yes.
The boxes you have to check in order to get that loan through.
For sure. That's part of the reason to do that pre-approval and that pre-qual up front, so you have a better understanding. As a lender, I like to collect as much information as I can up front, documentation, so I know if there's anything that we need to address. If someone's had a job change and maybe they went from salary to commission, well, now we have to look at that a little bit differently. So, I just think it's smart in terms of trying to take the emotion out of it, or at least make it a smoother process if we do most of that upfront work. So that they don't have to be stressed once they are under contract.
You're teeing me up with this perfectly, because I had in here next that what I feel makes you really good at your job is you have empathy for the people you're working with. You actually genuinely care about the people you're working with.
For sure.
You're not the person that's just trying to put someone in a deal just to get a deal done and make your money off of it. They can end up being a bad spot or a bad situation. Something that's kind of unique that's happening right now, like to a lot of people even in Scottsdale, is, let's say 5 years ago, you were making, just use easy numbers, $100,000. And then you're, covering your bills, you're getting by. And then now with the inflation and how much everything has increased, let's say you need 150 to make it and you're just barely getting by and you're not saving or anything. How does someone like that buy a home today? Are you seeing scenarios where people basically are being priced out of the market where unless you move, you pretty much have to rent? Like, what advice would you give that person?
I think that is tough for sure. There's a lot of talk about, a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until rates come down or prices come down. And my concern for them in that situation is, and what we are seeing out there is that, at least as of, the last recent history, prices have not been going down. They've continually gone up. Now it looks like, at least in our area here, the inventory is maybe better than it was, say, a couple of years ago, where it was so tight. Which does help, so that maybe there's not multiple offers on a home where that's really driving the price up. But that's another reason that I think it is smart to try and figure out how to afford that home. Kind of back to your question is creating a budget. And I know that's tough, but
tough but necessary.
It's like, I have the conversation with my kids sometimes, do you really need that $7 cup of coffee like 5 times a week? Or can we, it's sometimes it's the simple changes and
setting priorities, setting a budget, and then actually triaging and putting at the top of your list, okay, if buying our home is a priority, what are we willing to sacrifice here in order to make a reality?
Right. Yeah. And we know that, historically speaking, rates are cyclical. So they might be a little bit higher right now, but the hope is that if you can find a home that you really love or you want, or one that's going to work for your family, and you buy that home, the hope is that there's opportunities in the future, obviously, to refinance to a lower rate, and hopefully you have some equity. Nothing's guaranteed, certainly. We can't predict rates, but if you look at the historical data, we do tend to,
What's interesting that you see now, and if I'm wrong, then correct me, that you had not seen as in historical data, is that specifically for millennials, the amount of people buying homes has drastically gone down, because unless they got help from baby boomer parents, grandparents or something, or family money, or they're just a rock star that had a job that made it possible, they timed it right, so many people are just renting and they're not even trying to buy homes, probably because they're afraid of the scenario that I just described. Like, you buy a house that, like, I would say that it's just become very splotchy is the word I use for it, because there's certain parts of the valley here, just using it as a sample set, that are still strong. And you really have not seen
a big decline.
Yes, but then there's areas where we're seeing heavy 6-figure price cuts, and they're still not moving.
Okay.
Like in Cave Creek and stuff. We've seen some stuff like 5 different homes my wife and I have paid attention to, because they're not far off from where we live. And some of them cut $300,000, $400,000.
Wow.
And they're still not selling. and they're great products and nice, and they're just all sitting. And so I believe that this is going to be more splotchy than we've ever seen it before. I also think there's a correlation there. Something my father, who passed away but years ago, would say to me as son, you're going to see the middle class dissipate. And so now we're seeing more and more of that, which I didn't even think was possible. Even when he said it, I was like, what are you talking about? How is that even possible?
Yeah.
So now are you not only going to see splotchiness from geographical standpoint, but also from an income standpoint? I think we're going to see a big difference in first-time home buyers, like entry-level price point homes, to mid-level, more so who the middle class would buy those homes. And then you have your luxury jumbo loans or high priced homes. Those are still going really strong. And some of them are even getting stronger because the rich are getting richer.
Right.
And the gap is spreading. So we haven't really seen that, at least in my lifetime or in that recent of history, where there's not much of a middle class. And you would have to think that that's going to big picture affect the home market in a way maybe we have not seen. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how all of that plays out and how to handle that in a smart way. Because if you're priced out of your market, I mean, unless you go figure out a way to make more money, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And it's strange to see it happen so rapidly.
Right.
Like you see people moving to different parts. Like I have a bunch of different friends that have moved 40, 50 miles out because they got to find somewhere even where they can afford rent, because rent got so expensive in the valley.
Right.
I have a brother that owns a big box gym, like a membership gym in the Midwest. And he's had members telling him that the reason why they're canceling is they had to move farther out of town to find somewhere where they could afford rent and things like that.
Yeah.
So, it's a very, very interesting time that it feels like you just got to do exactly what you said. Get a good person that you trust to get advice from a team. And you just got to find out what's going to make sense for you specifically, instead of what your grandfather or even your parents are saying, like what they did, and you got to do what they did.
Right.
Because what made sense for their income level, where they lived at their time, made sense for them. Great.
Right.
And I think that, call it honorable or whatever, trying to respect and try to follow in those footsteps. But if the path looks a lot different than it did from them, maybe that might not be possible. So I guess if I was able to give any advice here, it would be take that pressure off. Like, who says you have to buy a home by a certain time, or, have a family by a certain time, or be established in your career by a certain time? Those are all fake, pressurized situations that we put on ourselves from a society or even from a family that don't need to be there. So allow yourself to take a break, especially if you don't feel like you are where you should be already at this point. You don't own your home yet, or you don't feel like it's even possible. And just let yourself breathe and then come up with a plan. Instead of trying to come up with a plan under pressure.
Absolutely.
Let's come up with a plan that we can actually execute and not be miserable the whole time we do it.
Something to work towards.
Yes.
And,
what do you think? I mean, I know I just kind of threw a lot of it up there, but and it's a very hard prediction, and I'm no guarantees whatsoever. I'm not asking that, but what do you think the next 5 years look like in the home market?
Well, I hope that it stays strong. I think that we have a lot of demand still, so that our housing inventory isn't where it needs to be in terms of availability. So that's still making it tough for families.
Would you say that's on existing homes or even on the new home stuff? Because I've seen some, maybe it was wrong. I watched this like hour-long YouTube video. I don't remember who put it up, but it was talking about new home inventory, that there was actually a surplus.
New home inventory has gone up.
Okay.
So that's a good thing, because we were behind for a long time. One of the issues that we have is that we have a lot of people out there that have really low rates from the refinance boom a few years, that went on for quite some time.
Yeah.
So when you have people with very, very low rates, and they do have quite a bit of equity, but they're reluctant to give that up to go buy another home, whether it be new construction or whether it be existing. So that keeps us a little stuck, so we'll see how that plays out. But I think that there will be opportunities for people in the next 5 years. It'll be interesting to see. We have a new administration coming in, how that's going to impact the economy, jobs, all of that. There's the thing that I've found in this business is that there's so many variables that affect it. It really isn't one thing that we can say, well, it's solely inflation that's creating this situation, or it's
like we have more variable now than we ever.
It can be what's happening in the world economy. It's not, there's just a lot of factors. So I think it's about opportunity and it's about, getting educated. And
I think there's a correlation to confidence too. Because if you think about it, in order to go sign up for a couple $100,000 or $1 million loan, you're saying, I have the confidence
that I'm going to be able
to pay this off. And today, so many people feel so beat down and anxious.
Right.
It's kind of scary, intimidating to sign on to something like that because they don't know if they believe in themselves to be able to go pay something off.
It is. And I think that's back to your, kind of our circling back to our original kind of where we started, if you will, that I think if you go in and you actually get the facts, if you look at it on paper, if you have someone say, okay, this is what you make, this is what you qualify for, this is what it actually looks like in terms of how much of a home you want to buy, then that gives you the opportunity to kind of chew on that a little bit and think about that. Does that work for me? Does it not work for me? Do I need to adjust a price? Do I need to adjust my time frame? Maybe I need to save more money. Maybe I want to do a blended, family. We're seeing some of that now, more generational families. I have had a couple families this year where, the mom is moving in with the kids to help take care of the grandkids while, the parents work and things like that. And they're all qualifying together. And that works too, and that allows them to split expenses. It's not for everyone, but, I think it's situational, and being able to have those conversations and explain this, this might be an option for you. Or I don't see it out here as much, but in the Midwest, we have a lot of families that buy duplexes and they live in one side and they rent out the other, and that helps offset their expenses. So there are things, there are options, but it's really about getting those answers. Like, okay, let's see where you're at, where you want to be. Let's figure out how to get there. Or if maybe home ownership isn't for you, but, or maybe it's just not for you right now. It just kind of depends on their goals, a family's goals and where they want to be and what else they have going on in their lives. And certainly income is a big piece of it. And it's hard to know what's going to happen. I'm hoping for the best, that things do improve.
Yes. I think a motive is a big part. Is why are you buying it?
For sure. Are
you living up to something that you think you need or have to do, or is it truly what you want to do? And also, we all want the biggest, nicest, not necessarily the biggest, but just like the nicest home. And then it's also kind of like, okay, but is that extra square footage or that extra money there, is that going to mean more happiness?
Right.
And I feel like if you're sitting in a home that you can afford and you're not stressed about, you're going to enjoy it so much more than in a home that's fancier and nicer and bigger, but you're chasing the payment.
Absolutely. And that's another reason to, once you know what that amount is that you're qualified for, it's really sad when people start looking in, they're looking in a different price point, a higher price point than maybe where they should actually be for what they want for a payment or what they qualify for. And they see that house that they absolutely love, and everything else they see is, it's not what they want.
Yeah, so that's very difficult, especially if they did what you said they shouldn't do and went and looked first, and now they see something that they want or a standard they want, and then they get down to the brass tacks.
Then they get the sticker shock, and they
can't make it work, and now they got to go back out and look for what will work, and it looks nothing like what they wanted. It's tough. And
some of that is aligning yourself with a good agent that understands that even if you qualify for more, maybe you don't want that payment. You have a certain budget you want to stay within, and helping you find that house. There are gems out there, and sometimes they need a little TLC, and you have to put the rose-colored glasses on and figure out if it's something that you can work with and improve and make your own, especially your first home. It doesn't have to be, I think everyone who's been a first-time home buyer, not everyone, many first-time home buyers, start with something modest and they make it their own. They build some equity, and then at that point they decide what they want to do.
That makes a lot of sense. I think when I look at the next 5 years, anybody that tries to tell you they think they know exactly what's going to happen is very arrogant and probably a little foolish.
If they
I think we can make an educated guess.
Yeah.
Everybody has a crystal ball. But even, the economists and different people I've listened to, some of the things that I've heard is that they are anticipating more of a real estate correction on the commercial side. That's already kind of starting. The housing side, we've seen more cash purchases in the recent history than we normally saw. And then again, that's going to be splotchy. Like here, we saw a ton of cash purchases because people sold their homes in California that were maybe even smaller, that they sold for whatever, $1.2 million. And then they came here and bought a bigger house for half the money and paid all cash. And then all of those then the prices started going nuts. And how many people did you see that weren't even thinking about selling? But when they saw all the prices going crazy, they all just started throwing their homes up on the market at some astronomical number, just seeing if someone would bite, and then they get some crazy payout. And then even the rental rates went to that too. The rental rates doubled because people started throwing them up there and being like, well, if someone wants to give me $8,000 a month to rent my house, sure, let's do it. But then so many people did it that it actually started raising the floor. And so I do believe, and I've seen some of it in certain areas, we're starting to see the correction of some of that, because some of it was sitting for so long that it's like, nope, no one's going to give you $8,000 for your $1,500 a month house. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Finally, enough time went by. They're like, okay. And they bring it back down, and you start to see the correction and the domino effect of things falling. But I don't think overall we're going to see as much of a correction on the housing prices as we would maybe 15 years ago when that last crash took place and you saw it countrywide.
It was for different reasons that happened. And so I don't know that we're following suit. There have been corrections in our industry to hopefully protect from those things happening again, things like income verification that are important. I don't know that we'll see that due to that reason. And we don't know if there's going to be some type of price correction for sure. But at least we've seen I think the increases in value maybe slow down a little bit, but there's still, year over year, we're still seeing that they are increasing. They're still positive. We'll just say that. I agree with you. Yeah. I don't know that we're going to see this drastic decrease. But that being said, it's hard to know what the future holds.
There definitely is a group, a sample set of people that are getting caught right now that, let's say 18 months ago, they bought a home for $1.5 million. Okay. I know I'm using huge numbers, and I don't mean for that to be not relatable to everybody, but where we live, like you go buy an entry level house that should have been $180,000 to $300,000 before, they're now $700,000 to $800,000, which is insane. So let's just use a number just to make the numbers easy. $1 million. So let's say they bought a house 18 months ago for $1 million and they got a 8% mortgage. Okay. Well, now that same house that has corrected is now, the comp next door is 800. Okay. So now it's already dropped 200,000. You're at 8% mortgage, and now you're just praying to God that there's not a major repair on your house, like you need a roof or whatever. What do you do if you're that person and now you're upside down?
Well, luckily, I don't think we've seen that happen yet, but I don't know. I mean,
it's going to be splotchy as well, I believe.
Obviously, there's different areas, and it's possible.
Yeah.
But the trends are that we are still year over year, increasing by a certain percentage. So I don't know. That's a tough one. Yeah, that's a tough one. I
think you got to be in a position to write it out.
You do. And that's why, I think that, for example, we see more people using fixed rate mortgages than adjustable rate mortgages. And that's a good reason to do that, because you know what your payment's going to be. It's going to be fixed, other than if you see changes in taxes or insurance, you kind of have that set amount.
Is there such thing as a mortgage that if the interest rate goes up, like a fixed rate where you're locked and it's not going to go up with it, but if it went down, that you could benefit? You can't get punished, but you can benefit. Does that exist?
No, not that I'm aware of.
We need to come up with that. We'll take over.
I'm not.
Yeah.
You know,
I like those odds.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any such mortgage. There is a refinance.
Sure.
You know,
Right.
so
Yeah, that option.
Yes, if rates go down, then there's certain.
So there's like, I'm saying there's a built-in ceiling, but there's no built-in floor. So all we can do is benefit if it does happen.
I'm not aware of such mortgage. No.
I'm holding out for that. That's what
we'll
I'm
keep
looking
you posted
for.
if that becomes available.
Okay. If people have more questions for you, what is the best way for them to contact you? Should I put your email in the description
my
below?
Email, my cell phone.
I'll put your email. Let's not put your phone number in there.
Okay,
I think
all right. Yeah.
anybody just the public watching this, she's too pretty for us to put your phone number down at the bottom. We're just going to put your email address, not let the internet have your phone number, free reign. Now I get to ask questions that I've been looking forward to ask.
Oh,
okay?
boy. Oh, no.
So where does your strength come from? Is it something you've always had, or is it something you've developed?
Oh, my goodness. That's a loaded question. Well, I will say I am third generation Arizona.
Okay.
I mean, so my grandmother was born in Tucson. My mom was born in Phoenix, and I was born in Phoenix. So I think that my grandmother, she grew up in the foothills of Tucson. Tough lady. We called her Rattlesnake Ruth. Because
Rattlesnake, huh?
did, yes, because there's a story of when she and her husband, my grandfather, liked to fish. And so they were at the lake with my mom, and my mom was sitting on a cot. It was nighttime or whatever. And my grandmother heard a rattlesnake under her cot, under my mom's cot. So my grandmother went and got a stick and put it in the fire and went over there and just shoved that stick down the hole where the rattlesnake was. So she was one tough lady. She also had her brothers move her house when she got divorced.
Okay.
They just hooked it up to their truck and moved it on out of there. So So I really believe that a lot of that my strength, if you want to call it that, is deeper. And my mom too. She's a tough lady, a fighter, feisty, wonderful, sweet, kindest woman in the world, but don't want to get on her bad side. So and I'm not saying that's
I get it,
but she was just. Yeah, so I think that, and maybe some life experiences that have kind of brought me to that. A
lot of times, I kind of said this at the beginning when I was introducing you. When you meet someone that's really strong, a lot of times they kind of lead with that in every area. They're just always come across as very strong, very hard-willed. But you just even described your mom that way. So it sounds like you saw her that way. You are still so kind. You lead with kindness, even though you have the strength to follow it up. How do you remain so kind? Where does that come from in your heart?
I like to look at people as they're just individuals. We all have our struggles. We all have our things. We all started out as a little baby, and then life happened, whatever that might look like. And so I prefer to learn someone's story maybe first. Not perfect, but I would like to hear that side first and kind of understand who they are. So I think you do that by being kind because people's walls hopefully come down a little bit.
It creates an environment where you can actually get to know them so they can let their walls down.
So that they feel like that you, and I genuinely care. I think everyone has an interesting story and something that we can all learn from each other, an experience, and sharing that is a big deal. I like to kind of leave the strength kind of in the back room, so to speak, unless it's needed.
Yeah, and the reserves. That makes total sense. You lead with that kindness and you know that strength's there when you need to lean on it. I like that. I think that would be very beneficial to our society and our world if more of us did that.
Yeah. I think there's so many good people in the world. There really are.
When someone is rude or you have a bad interaction with them, oftentimes it has nothing to do with the scenario itself. It's something else that's going on.
And it's hard sometimes when someone is snappy with you to think about that in the moment because you just want to go
so
like, hey,
Yeah,
you
to
just
not
want to kind of give it right back to
Yeah,
them. But
to see their wound instead
it
of
is
seeing
hard.
their action.
It is hard to stop and think, hey, maybe there's something else here that is happening in their life.
Or not to not even act up, to do the same, like for ourselves, not to act out of our wounds, to still be able to act with kindness. And even though someone else has hurt us, that doesn't mean everybody's going to.
Right.
And I think that a lot of us can get callous to the point where we just expect everybody's going to be evil or going to do whatever's going to be
put up your guard
self-serving, and that's what we need to bet on. And I think that there's prudence in not being too quick to trust.
Oh, for sure.
You don't have to trust someone to be kind.
You don't. You cannot. You can be kind, and you can still learn about them. So,
what does legacy mean to you, and what do you want yours to be?
Oh, wow. I honestly think for me, it's my kids. It's, you know, I am very close with them, and maybe I'm too much of a hover mom. I don't know. They would probably say that, but for me, it's really, you know, I want to help them have the tools to be successful. And I feel like that is really my legacy.
I love that. I mean, I think it makes perfect sense that that's your answer, because when you just briefly spoke about your mom, it obviously made a huge impact on you to see her kindness and also her strength.
Yeah.
And so if you're teaching your kids how to do the same thing, I'd say that's leaving a pretty good legacy, because there's going to be a ripple effect there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, everybody should define success differently. We shouldn't define success based on societal expectations or even family, like of what they say success means.
Right.
I think once we understand that God created us with certain talents and abilities, but we all have worth, no matter how much money we make or what we own or how we look and all those things, we all have the same worth. None of us are worth more than anyone else.
Exactly.
And if we all treated each other that way, what a difference it would make.
Right.
There's a lot of people that I know that are even good people, but yet when I'm in a room with that person and say there's a really wealthy or important person, and then there's a person that doesn't make as much money, that people gravitate to that wealthy person or that famous person or that person that pulled up with the fancy car or whatever. That's so normal today. That there's like gravitas, there's an attraction to the person that's successful of what we see on social or on the TV or in the news or whatever, and that the person that doesn't live an exciting life or doesn't have the flash life, that there's not as much of a pull. I want to talk to that person for the most part now. I've seen that, because a lot of times the person that has really, really good things to say, often because they're quiet and not overly assertive, they never get a chance to say them unless you actually intentionally go have a conversation with them.
They have humility.
Exactly.
You know, and those people, I think I see my dad that way. He's very, and I love this about him. He's very kind. But he's very quiet. He doesn't interject himself into conversations. He listens first. And then, you know, if he feels he has something to contribute, he does. And he always tells me, you know, people don't like unsolicited advice. And he's really talking about me with my kids, because I'll be telling about, you know, they did this or whatever. And he'll be like, you know, you have to think about that. They'll let you know if they need you.
I've learned that the hard way many times. Coming from a place that's a good place because I care.
Yeah.
And I know that's a lot of us.
Yeah. You want to help.
But if they didn't ask and I'm just giving them that unsolicited advice, most of the time, even if they do hear me, they're not listening to the point where they're going to absorb it or especially put it into practice or implement.
Right? Maybe they just need to.
But I found that if you don't constantly give that unsolicited advice and you just listen, at some point they'll then ask. Right. And then when they ask, now they're actually going to absorb and hopefully implement.
Because they're ready to hear what someone else thinks about whatever situation they're facing, you know. Yeah, I agree.
You said something earlier about a lot of times when people put those walls up. I think when you're giving unsolicited advice, you're speaking to that wall, that invisible wall that they've put up that they're not ready to bring down yet and really hear what you have to say.
Right.
And then once they've asked, that means maybe they haven't brought the whole wall down, they opened a little window. They listen through that window.
Yeah. I'm willing to hear something. What do you think? Yeah. Exactly
right. Is there anything else on mortgages you want to cover or go?
No, I just, all I will say is, I love to help people with that. So if there's questions, always happy to be a resource.
You just teed me up again. I have here a note. Remind them to email her with questions. So do that. Her email will be in the description. Something I do want to remind you guys of is our Push-Ups for Poverty initiative is wrapping up. We ended up raising almost $5,000. So thank you guys so much for that. All of that money is going to feed these starving children. There was a nice individual that donated the money for the food, but it cost $20,000 to ship the food. There's a horrible food shortage because one of their crops, the yield was much lower than it normally is. And so thankfully someone stepped up and donated the meals. It's just so expensive getting things there. It's in Eswatini, South Africa. So us raising 5,000 of that 20,000 knocked out 25% of that budget. So thank you guys so much for that. The donors that are here local that I know of that got along side of me and was a part of this, we're going to be making the video of us all doing the push-ups. So if we did, let's just call it $5,000, we're gonna have to do 500 push-ups between us. So that'll be coming out soon. Look out for that. The website still is up. You'll see that in description, pushupsforpoverty.org. So it's not like we're going to turn money away if you want to give more money to help these kids, because they definitely need it. And then also, we just shot our first car video last week that we've done in a long time. I had so much fun with that. Eric's cooking up the editing right now, and that'll be out next week. And we're going to be doing more of those that I think a lot of you will really enjoy, especially those of you that found my channel in the first place from one of my old car videos and have stuck around. I appreciate you. I enjoy making those so much, and it's been years since we've done it. And just so you know, the reason why I'm going to be doing more of that now, other than the fact that I just love it, is that it's a way to reach a broader audience than we reach with the podcast. It's a way that if someone wants to watch, an exciting video of me doing donuts in a 1,000 horsepower car that might not click on a video like this, that's an hour-long conversation.
That's awesome.
Hopefully there's something that I say in one of those videos that at some point, whether because you subscribe to my channel, it's just come up on your feed and you've skipped it enough times that you finally decided, all right, I'll listen to one of these podcasts and see what this meathead has to say. And then my hope and prayer is that you listen to one of these conversations, that there's something there that encourages you or helps you or educates you in some way, something that an amazing person like Diana said today that could help you, whether it's you're in a phase of life you're trying to buy a home, or which I feel like is the most important advice she gave today, is how to be a kind person, but to also be strong. And, if you're going through life with a chip on your shoulder, it's not a very fun way of doing life. No, done it. I've done it. Oh, have I done it? And letting go of that burden is, it's a whole nother chance at life. To not look at every person and scenario like it's out to get you, to actually be able to, we talked about this on a few videos ago. If you had 10 things that happen, and let's say 1 or 2 of the 10, so you have 8 good things that happen and 2 bad things, but you only focus on the bad things, you see everything as bad. And you're not even able to enjoy and see that the majority, those other 8 things were all good things.
Right. It's
the bad things are still just as hard. When you numb yourself off and you're angry and you just assume everybody's bad, it doesn't make the bad things easier. Yeah, you expected it. Good for you. You thought everything was going to be bad. And I'm not trying to be coy or disrespectful towards you. I'm saying this to myself into the lens. That was me. I just expected everything was going to be bad because I thought it would prepare me more for when the bad things happened. But then I realized I was just missing out on all the good. All the good was still there, staring me right in the face, but I couldn't enjoy it because of my perspective, my attitude, and carrying that chip. And then I let go of it. And now if you enjoy those 8 and you can appreciate those 8, it actually prepares you and helps you handle the 1 or 2 bad things or those bad people, because you actually see the good and you feel the good more than the bad.
And hopefully good attracts good. right? And then
Yeah.
you have less bad.
Yeah, I'd like a world like that. Hopefully we can do that.
Me too.
Yeah, I think we all would.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here.
Thank you
I
for
enjoyed this so
having me.
much.
This was fun.
These conversations I have with each person are such a blessing. Just the fact that you would give me the time and honor me with the time to be here.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. I meant every
Appreciate
word
it.
that I said. I know you said at the beginning that was one of the nicest things.
For sure.
I'm just telling you what I see and what I've experienced. I've known you now for almost a year. I can't believe it's already been a year.
I know.
But
I know.
so many days that when I see you and I'm around you, you make my day better.
Well, and you help me every time I come to you. So he is a fitness guru for sure.
I don't know about
amazing. Yes.
I think I've just learned enough hard lessons. I'm finally not
Yeah.
doing everything the wrong way.
No, a great motivator, even when you don't feel like doing it. So,
Thank you.
yeah,
So
no.
thank you guys for watching another episode of Living Lifted, and we'll see you next week.